Okay, welcome. Let me switch things up here just a little bit so we can see. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Okay, can't see the camera yet. Let me see why not. Just showed it to me. Oops. There we go. Okay. Can you guys see my my paper? Is that showing up for everybody?
Yep,
Good.
we can see it.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about pull versus push systems. And so just a question for you in the chat, or people can talk if they want to. What do you feel you're doing in your job? Like, what have you experienced? If you had to describe what you're doing, and if you just don't know, that's fine too. How would you describe the way that your work is done? Is it a pull system or a push system? And saying, I have no idea what those terms mean, that's why I'm here, that's fine too. So just put in the chat, push system, okay. What about anyone else? A chasing system, okay, that's a good one. That's a no idea, okay. Okay, so what we're wanting to do here, I just wanted to go through and we're going to be spending just about 30 minutes kind of looking at, I do want to show you one thing. See these new shirts? We've got some Agile Lunch and Learn shirts being printed, or actually I'm printing them in my garage. We had a little bit of a slowdown on the printing process when the recent rain flooded everything. But anyway, we'll have some Agile Lunch and Learn shirts to give away for
masters are a
prizes and
different
stuff.
breed, okay?
Okay, let me mute everybody. Just make sure no one accidentally gets on and doesn't expect to be. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about push systems and pull systems. So a push system usually is a situation where you're worried about what should we start next. Thinking about what's the next thing we need to start working on. Where a pull system is usually more focused on what can we finish next. And that may sound subtle, but what I want to do here is just kind of look at a potential board. So you may have a board that looks something like this, and we're going to use these tokens to represent work. So if we've got work spread throughout the board like this in all these different places, here we'll put a few over here. In a push-based system, you would come in and actually let me just ask you this: if this is what you come in the morning and you're having you're getting ready to do your daily face-to-face meeting, and your board looks like this, you've got work laid out like this, what is the thing that you're most likely to do? Like, where's the team going to start? Feel free to come off, if anybody wants to talk through this, come off mute and talk through, or you can put in the chat. What would your team probably do if they saw something that looked like this? What would be the first thing they would try to do? The token on the right, meaning they'd start by trying to get the token on the right deployed. Is that what you're thinking, Mike? Okay, cool. So now keep in mind, I'm asking not what should they do, but what are they most likely to do? Okay, and Jude says they're most likely to grab something from the to-do. And okay, then the opposite. So very good. So that is what we naturally try to do. If you look at a system like this, what we're likely to try to do is say, oh, there's nothing in requirements, there's nothing in dev. We need to fill that up. We need to start bringing in more work. And let's just consider what it would look like. Like, let's say we've got people like this. We got two people working on this, and we got somebody working on this, and then we got one person here that's not working on anything. Most of the time, what most teams would naturally try to do is say, oh, well, we've got somebody here, let's bring them in and have them work on the thing in requirements. And there are situations where that makes perfect sense, and we'll talk about them in a little bit, but that probably in a pull-based system, that's not where we're going to start. In a pull-based system, we're going to be thinking not of how do we get work into the system. We're going to be thinking of how do we take this work here, the thing that's got them that we've invested the most in, and is there anything possible we can do to take this and get it to done? And then is there anything possible we can do to this? So we might look at this, and this person right here, if they've got some capacity, the first thing we would want to ask is there any way that they could actually help get this deployment over to done? And there may not be. If there's not, then the next thing we would want to ask is say, is there anything they can do to help with testing? And then if there's not, we may eventually come over and say, okay, the best thing for them to do is work on requirements. But what I want to point out is that is not what I'm describing here as a pull-based system is probably not the way your team works by default. And there's something in the way that we approach, particularly with the way that we approach sprints, where there's a feeling if you look at this and you've got all this work over here that has yet to be done, there will be a sense of urgency to start more work in order to try to make sure that it's done by the end of the sprint. And a lot of times what you do is you end up with a situation where you start this work and maybe you get it over here, in this halfway finished state, and maybe this gets over to deploy, but now we've got all this work here that actually hasn't finished. And I would like to submit that a better situation to be in than this would be something where maybe we haven't started stuff, but we actually got two things all the way over to be deployed, because it means that we've delivered something that's valuable. We're getting more learning from the process because it's actually been deployed all the way to done. Does that make sense? Or let me just ask it this way. Is what I'm describing with a pull system, is it something that seems at odds with the way that your team generally approaches work? Does it seem like it would be an uncomfortable thing for people to do, to think of in terms of not starting new work, even though you know you're trying to finish it within the sprint? What do you think?
Mark, not everyone will be involved in test and deploy, so there may be some resources available to pull from to do, right?
Right. So what you're saying is if we've got stuff over here, maybe this person can't help with the deploy or can't help with the test. And so they might as well come over here and work on something else. And what I'd like to suggest is what you're saying is absolutely true. Um, Sometimes it is true because there are governance around it, reasons that this person, if they got involved in the development, they're not allowed to touch anything on the deploy. But a lot of times, the reason that's true is simply because we haven't designed our systems, we haven't designed our process of deploying in a way that can actually take advantage of people working on multiple things. We're not actually dealing with a cross-functional team. Now, maybe not having a cross-functional team is optimal for your particular situation, um, but maybe it's not. And I think a lot of times we're working that way just simply because that's how we've always worked, not necessarily because it's actually the best way to work. But that is a very good point, right? We may not be able to put this person over here. Um, but what I want to suggest is a lot of times I don't think we're even asking if we can put this over here. In some situations, if you have somebody that's actually just normally a tester, putting a developer with them that understands more about understands what's happening, can take what the tester is seeing and give them rapid feedback and maybe even fix things as the tester's working on it, that may be a more efficient way of working than letting the tester finish everything. Okay, see, often I hear no because law of diminishing returns from team perspective, even if it really grows. Okay, not everyone's comfortable with swarming. That's true. And I think the teams I've worked on a lot of teams that were very uncomfortable with swarming, and we were able to get them to the point that they were more comfortable with it, and finally to the point where they didn't want to work any other way. That was just naturally what they did. But I do agree it is something that's uncomfortable when you first run into it. So here are some of the things that happen when we think of push systems. Let's write down some of the things that happen and some of the things that may be unintuitive but tend to happen with push systems. So with push systems, so let's say we've got a push system. Here are some things we're going to. So a push system naturally is going to encourage, start this up here, larger batch sizes. And the reason that the push system is going to naturally kind of encourage larger batch sizes is because we're going to end up with work like this, where let's say if we've got all this work over here to be done for the sprint, and we start working on and we're focused on what can we start, we may put these things over into requirements, and then this gets over into dev, and then we're like, hey, let's pull some more things into requirements, and then this one gets ready to get over into dev. Now we've got a situation where we've got all these things in flight at the same time. We've got these people working on maybe something like that. Actually, let's do it like this. So then when we get point and those people finish their work and it goes over here to test, and let's say we've got one tester involved. We're not really cross-functional. So we've got one tester working on trying to test these things. So if you're trying to test multiple things at the same time, you've got three things that have changed that are coming in, and you've got them all at the same time, you're probably not going to try to test this and deliver it, test this and deliver it. It's going to feel a lot more efficient to test all of those things and say, yes, I've tested the entire application, it does what it's supposed to, and then move all those things over to deployment. So, and Jay, so true in the second part of the sprint. I think you're talking about, Jay, are you talking about the batching being true?
Yeah, the first week of the sprint, it's all about developers.
Yes,
SQA is wrapping up. And the second week, everything, the SQA is bombarded with all kind of stories to be tested.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And part of that is because the way that if we're pushing work into the system, what's going to happen is we're going to get that lumpy delivery. And if we're pushing work into the system, that lumpy delivery is going to make sense because we're going to be thinking in terms of, oh, here's a big batch of stuff I need to deliver. So we've had stuff gather here in the test column, and now we're going to think, okay, well, we're going to test all this, and then we're going to push it all the way over here to deploy. Well, now we've got this lumpiness moving all the way through. Instead of a small amount of work running through the whole system, we're now dealing with lots of individual pieces, and we'll deploy them, we'll test them all at the same time, we'll deploy them all at the same time. And what that ends up doing is it ends up kind of in from the developer standpoint, they're like, I put all this stuff in, it's all going to be tested together. I might as well take these two stories and I'll just work on them together because it's going to be tested together anyway. So that makes it even more lumpy. And it's kind of this reinforcing cycle of things getting larger and larger batch. And what I find interesting about this is it's not like people are behaving irrationally. They're behaving in a way that makes sense based on the system that they're working in, because that's how the work's going to come through. Um, so if we're working with, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So with a push system, we're going to naturally tend toward having larger batch sizes. But those larger batch sizes also makes it harder to justify investments in automation. And this may not be immediately apparent why it might be like that, but if I'm moving all this stuff through, and like I'm getting to testing, I've got all these things that I'm testing. Well, if I need to test the application, and let's say it takes me X amount of time to test the application, let's say it takes me 2 hours to test the application. If I have to test the application 2 hours for this, then deliver it, 2 hours for this, and then deliver it, 2 hours for this, and deliver it, and that's just constantly what's coming through, I'm going to be it's going to start becoming painful. I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to say, hey, that's painful. Let's see if we can automate some of this. But if I'm getting all these things in here, and let's say I've got 5 things in here, it's really got really lumpy the way that we've delivered. I've got all these things in here, and I'm just going to spend the 2 hours testing everything and then deploying it through. Well, that's the difference. Now it looks like it's only costing me 2 hours to deliver these, to do my portion of the testing. Whereas if I'm doing individually, it's going to look like it's 10 hours. And that shift, by doing the batches, it makes it harder for us to work on harder for us to justify the automation that would let us deliver small pieces all the way through, which further reinforces the idea of having larger batch sizes that we're moving through. So that's another thing that you'll see with push systems is it's harder to justify investments in automation. It tends to encourage manual testing for the reasons that we just mentioned. And everything I said about automation on the testing side is also going to be true for the deployment side. If I'm deploying 10 times a day, really small stories all the way through, I'm going to really, really feel the pain of not having automation. Whereas if I'm only deploying once per sprint, I may not be able to justify making the investment in automation. Let's see. That's some of the notes. Okay, and pull systems generally tend to start on the left of the board and see what can be started. And this means when we're doing this, that type of approach creates a focus on being busy. And our goal is to make sure that everybody's doing some work. And so if somebody's not doing any work, the idea is give them more work, pull more work into the system to make sure that everybody's operating at capacity. And there's some interesting graphs if you look at like when you if you look at how like traffic flows and things like that. And if you have a road that is running at full capacity, the ability to get things through it is greatly diminished over than if you're sending fewer things through one at a time. So that's what we're going to see with a push system is we're going to see this lumpiness, which kind of reinforces larger batch sizes and decreases our ability to justify investments in automation. So now let's talk about examples of pull systems. So a pull system is going to kind of start at the other end of things. So pull systems. So in a pull system, manual steps are going to be much more painful. Manual steps equal pain. Now, that may sound bad, but this is actually a very good thing. This is a very, very good thing because it forces the type of behavior that will invest in automation. And when we talk, and the reason this is true is because your fixed costs, if we think in terms of fixed costs for delivering a story, those are going to go up significantly when you're based on a flow system. So let's look at what that looks like here. So if I have something here, and let's say I'm delivering more with a pull system. So I'm pulling this work and it's going across, and I get here to the test. And for some reason, this testing takes me 5 hours to test everything to say, yes, this is good to deploy to production. So I've got 5 hours that I've invested in this. And then it deploys. Well, right following after this is another story. So this gets deployed. Now I'm spending another 5 hours testing this. And let's say that we're making our story size really, really small in order to handle flow. Matter of fact, let's say it's so small that we are maybe deploying multiple times a day, or we're even doing some stories that are just changing a few lines of code. So the poor tester here is getting all this stuff coming through, and here comes another 2 lines of changing code, and now they've got to invest for 5 hours, right? So this starts getting really, really painful here because so much time, that fixed cost per story, we're sending so many stories through that it gets really, really painful to try to deal with those. Now, that may sound, if in a pull-based system, that push, I'm sorry, in a pull-based system, in a push-based system, we deal with that by saying, okay, well, we'll just batch all this stuff together. But in a pull-based system, where we're pulling stuff through, we're not going to start new work until stuff gets all the way through. So what happens is we start really magnifying. It really puts a spotlight on this area where we are actually being inefficient. Now, that's painful. That fixed cost per story, which doesn't matter if you've got a two-line story or a 200-line story or a complete rewrite of the system, you still, let's say you're in a system where you still have to test everything before you can meet the governance requirements to deploy it. That fixed cost gets very, very expensive. But this is a good thing because it points us to the parts of our process that are actually slowing us down, the parts of our process that are impeding our ability to deliver things all the way through. Let me check and see. There's a couple questions here. I may deal with some of these in a minute. Let me check. Okay, somebody asked, I think this is a good time to answer this one, if stakeholder behavior may have an influence on whether or not a team adopts push or pull approach toward their work. And I think that is, yes, that is true, but I think an even better influence, or something that influences that even more, is that if a team is not capable of delivering something small all the way through, the stakeholders are less likely to ask for that. Or they may perceive it as being too expensive. And so you end up spiraling toward a push system just because the investment has not been made on getting small things all the way through. In my experience, stakeholders that start seeing things flow all the way through in a pull-based system and start getting that rapid feedback of, hey, I asked for this and I got part of it 2 days later and now I can show it to people and I'm getting kudos for, hey, we were able to deliver something. They really like that. And it's very easy to help reinforce that if you make a small investment in it. So that the testing can be a slowdown, but it could also be deployment, right? It could also be dev work. We might be in a situation where we're batching so much stuff into dev work that it's slowing things down. Or even requirements, right? We may be, things may get bottlenecked at requirements. So I'm using testing as an example and deployment as an example, just because that's where I think it's easiest for us to visualize it. But it's it can happen any stage that we have along this. Okay, so let's go back and talk more about the examples of a pull. Oh wow, we're going through time fast. Okay. Um, so in this situation, it becomes a lot easier. Sorry, I've got game tokens flowing over. It's a lot easier to justify investments. It's easier to justify automation. And that can be in deployment or testing. The simplest way to achieve this is to start on the right. So if you're looking, the big takeaway I would say, if you have the ability to make this change, if the idea of a pull system sounds good to you, there's lots of things you can do, right? You can hire me to come work with your team. You can do all kinds of different things. But the simplest thing you can do starting today, or probably starting tomorrow, if you've already had your daily face-to-face meeting, is this. So let's say we got work here laid out like this. And the best way we can start doing a pull system is say, okay, what do we have to do here, right? So if we start here on the right and we say, okay, we need to deploy this story right here. Who can work on deploying this story right here? And Joe says, I can work on deploying that story. And then you say, okay, well, let's get two people on it, because we'll probably deliver more than twice as fast if we've got two people, because this has some complicated things. Let's say it's not something that's just a matter of flipping a switch. And so Sue's going to help with it too. And then we say, okay, so does it help to add anyone else to this? Say, no, that's the maximum we can actually work productively with. Okay, so now this story needs to be tested. Who can work on testing? Well, we're going to put you on testing here. Does it make sense to have two people working on testing that? And in this case, let's say for some reason it's like, no, this is just really run of the mill. We know what we're doing, so it doesn't. So we're going to we've got this last person. We put him here. At this point, we have accomplished everything we probably need to, or at least the important stuff that we need to for our daily face-to-face, right? We've come up with a plan of working for the day. There's this stuff over here, but you know what? This stuff doesn't really matter, because this is the stuff that's important. These are the things that we're trying to get through. These things we can deliver value by just making a few more steps. This stuff over here may take us a lot longer to make value. Now, we may find maybe we get through with the testing and then it's time to move somebody over here. But the point is, we've optimize the way that we're working to deliver and finish the work that's already been started. And this is a really big deal, because I know somebody said they start on the right, so that's awesome. A lot of teams don't do that, or they focus more on keeping people busy rather than having a plan for how they're going to deliver for the day. Because it would also be just as good to say, hey, this person, do we want to assign you to this? And say, you know what, they may need help with the deployment, they may need help with testing. We're not going to give you anything to do today. We're not going to assign you to a particular thing. Go see if you can help here, and if you can't, go see if you can help here, because our goal is to make sure that the team is able to deliver, not just that we've assigned you to keep you busy. We may also say, hey, this person right here, there's this piece of deployment that's really causing problems. Can you go ahead and work on trying to optimize that, because it fails about 50% of the time, and we think it would be a good investment to go ahead and get that piece automated. So that's an idea of the types of things that you would see with a pull system if we're focused on actually delivering work, actually getting this value over here to where it can start delivering a return on investment. Yeah, so that's a very good point. Cody's saying it may have been said already, but a pull system pairs extremely well when your teams are focused on the most important or the most valuable work. Yes, that's absolutely true. Because if you are focused on the most valuable work, then you're able to take these stories, split them in half, and deliver the most valuable piece of them sooner, and pull that through. And then the remaining part gets prioritized against everything else that you could possibly split. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stick around. I knew I was trying to shoot for 30 minutes here. I'm going to jump over to our Slido, because since I've got these new shirts that we're printing, I really want to make sure that we go ahead and give one away today. So let's go ahead and start our quiz based on what we're saying, what we've said here. So go ahead and join that quiz. It should pop. Is that popping up for everybody where you can see it?
No.
It's not. Okay. Okay, that's odd.
I can see it.
You can see it? Okay.
Can do it. I can see it.
Okay, so it should pop up in the side thing. If you're in a place that blocks it, it may, well, here, let me do one thing here that might help with that. I'm going to throw a joining link in here. If you can't see it in the app, you can go this link. Oops. Okay, so going back and there. So we should be on the first. Did that let anybody vote?
It says poll is locked.
Yeah, it was up there and then it locked.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to start it again then. Let's try this one more time. Okay, there. Okay, I see the participants. You should be able to join now. Give you just a second in case anybody hasn't. Is that letting you join? Okay, I see 18 people. We had 48 a minute ago, so I'm not sure if it's working for everybody. We'll go ahead and start it here. Okay, so push systems are usually concerned with what? Looks like you got 12 seconds to answer. With finishing work, with making sure everyone is busy, or work in progress limits or cycle time. Push systems are mostly concerned with what? I get this to let me go to the next step. Okay, I'm gonna make a change here real quick. This isn't cooperating with me. Okay, so yes, pull systems are usually most concerned with trying to make sure everyone is busy. Even if that's not what people are saying they're focused on, that's usually what's actually happening in practice. So I encourage you, if you look at your work and you say it looks like we're mostly a pull system here, ask yourself if you're more focused on keeping people busy than actually finishing and completing work. Okay, next question. Which is not true of pull-based systems? So which one of these things is not true? They typically start on the left side of the board. Pull systems ask, what can we finish? They make it easier to justify investing in automation, or they make fixed cost per story very expensive. So which of these is not true about pull-based systems? And yes, pull-based systems, they typically start on the right side of the board. So the one that's not true, I realize that's a little bit weird pulling a knot here, but the one that's not true is that they typically start on the left side of the board. The left side of the board is where we go to start new work. A pull-based system is going to first start with what can we finish? Okay, and our leaderboard here, let's see, it looks like we've got Tizzy in the top spot, followed by Kindle, Guest Matt, Brett, Cody, D Fox, and Natalia. Next question. Why do push systems make it harder to justify investing in automation? Is it because they use Jira? Because push systems achieve flow in alternative ways? Because push systems are only used in projects that can't be automated? Or because batching, testing, and deployment seems to lower the per story cost? So yes, batching, testing, and deployment seems to lower the per story cost of the work because we can do the deployment once for 5 stories, or we can do the testing once for 5 stories. So it makes us feel like pushing these things together make it harder to justify because our cost per story feels lower because we're batching things together. And there we got Tizzy, Brett, and Natalia are in the top 3 spots. Next question. What do work in progress limits provide? Select 2. You select 2 items here. They show when there is capacity to start new work. They slow down flow, and they prevent new work from being started prematurely, or they give the team something to ignore in order to feel more in charge of their own destiny. So in this case, I guess that was the one thing I kind of skipped over. The work in progress is saying that we are not going to start, we're going to limit how much we can have in any column. And I realized I did not talk about that one very much. But yes, they do prevent work from being started prematurely. And they show where there's capacity to start new work. So the idea is that we have something here that says we're going to limit this to only 2 things in each of these columns, or only 1 thing in each of these columns. And so if we've got something in this column in test, we're not going to pull anything else in here until this is out, and we now have an empty spot where we can pull stuff into. We have a free thing. And I apologize, I meant to get to that more, but ran out of time, so that's why that one wasn't on there. This next one may be about work in progress limits too. We'll see. Okay, we got Tizzy Cody and Mark M in the top spots. Next question. The simplest thing you can do to start moving to a pull system. So is it make sure the team fully understands cumulative flow diagrams? Is it bring in an agile coach? Is it story-based daily face-to-face starting on the right and working to the left? Or is it switch to Jira or switch away from Jira? So which of these is the simplest thing you can do to start moving to a pull system? And as much as I would like to say that you need to bring in an agile coach and you should talk to me, and that's not a bad idea, just be completely clear, that's not a bad idea. The simplest thing you can do is to start using story-based daily face-to-face. So start on the right side of the board and focus on how can we deliver this particular story, and then work your way across from there. It's very simple. It doesn't cost very much money to do, and most times you can get the teams on board with it. And one thing I want to point out with that is if you're using everyone go around and say what you did yesterday and what you're planning to do today, if you have any blockers, that type of daily face-to-face meeting is very focused on making sure that everyone was busy yesterday and is committing to being busy today. That's not a pull-based, flow-based system because we're focused on making sure that we're running at capacity instead of flipping around and looking at from the dimension of how can we optimize our ability to deliver the work that's in progress, deliver the things that we say are valuable. Okay, leaderboard. Okay, let's see who wins one of these fabulous shirts. And it looks like Tizzy. Tizzy, you take the top spot. Very good, Tizzy. So send me your address and what shirt size you need, and I will either get it in the mail to you, or I will go in the garage and print it because some of these sizes I haven't printed yet. So let me know your size and where to send it, and Tizzy will get that shirt in the mail to you.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
I wasn't here at the beginning. Is it the turn on your video shirt, or is it the one you're wearing?
It's the one I'm wearing.
Oh, cool.
Got new shirts. I think you already have a turn your video on one, don't you?
Yeah. This is a cool design. I like it.
Cool. Good. Glad you like it. Okay, well, I'm going to, so that covers what I was wanting to get through today in the 30 minutes, but I do want to go through some of these questions that people have put in the Q&A. So you want to stick around, and we'll also have some time just to chat here too. So let me bring that up and take a look at these questions. Okay, I think we already talked about the stakeholder one. Got a few other things in here. Okay, so how do you handle mainframe changes and multiple projects with the same delivery dates? So Kelly, can you talk a little bit more about what you're thinking of there, like things where everything has to be done at the same time?
Yeah, like we get so we're one lab, but we get multiple projects from all lines of business because our system is a mainframe system.
Mhm.
So we touch everything. So we can't just deploy pieces of code. It all has to go at once. And we have multiple projects. Like sometimes we're working on 4 or 5, even 6 projects all at the same time. And we're really governed and driven by the date and with those projects. For an example, if they're deploying a new credit card, right? There's code that we need to deploy. And it needs to be done by a certain date because they've committed to our clients, right?
So
That's just a small example.
have you ever had a date where you started? Well, let's look at it this way. So let's say we've got all this work that needs to be done. We've got, I'm just going to do 2, but we can extrapolate to 6 things. We've got this project that we expect to start here and be done, and we've got this project that we expect to start here and be done. Well, for these purposes, we'll say it's the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm doing this, actually, let's go and do what you were saying, but let's do more. Let's do 4. We've got 4 things that we want to all start and finish at the same time. You know, there's these dates they need to be done by. I should be able to take these, and now maybe this is an optimal way to work and everything, and you always hit your date. But in most organizations, there is a chance that you're actually not going to finish on time, right? That this date over here, no matter how much we want, some of these things may not be done. And if that is possible, that some of these things may not be done by that date, we may need to prioritize. And maybe we find that if we do this, we allocate more resources to delivering A and more to delivering B at the same time. Then these are done, and then we allocate all those resources to deliver these things here.
That's kind of what we do.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but the point I want to make with this, though, is if I work on these things all at the same time,
Mhm.
I am probably incurring more risk than if I do it like this, because the cost of delay on these things probably is not the same, right? If I miss the date for it, let's say I miss the date for all of them, that's probably going to be more expensive than if I identify the ones that are most expensive to miss the date, deliver those first, and then deliver the two that are less expensive if I miss the date. And if I work it that way, maybe one of these, let's say this one ends up taking longer over here. Well, this is still a much lower risk, less expensive situation than if every single one of those ends up extending because for some reason we didn't have enough resources to actually finish something. So that's one way to think about it. Is that helpful at all? Or is that how you're doing it now?
It's kind of how I do it now, because we follow the methodology of Agile, but we're really not. Our dates are driving us,
Mhm.
right? So we go by the dates, especially if the consumer, and we look at too, like our regulatory projects would take priority over,
Mhm.
a new launch of a project, that sort of thing. But it's just hard because we're the infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, then the other stuff can't be built.
Right.
So we have to go first before every project, and
Mhm.
our system is the main system. So all the lines of businesses talk to our system. So we're engaged in every project,
Right.
and it becomes tough when you've got the same set of core people doing all the same
Yes.
projects at the same time.
Well, the thing that I would encourage you that may be, and maybe you're already doing this, and I'm sure you're doing this to some extent, but I think a lot of times organizations start talking in terms of this has to be done by this date. And while there is truth in that, the actual reality is that there are some things that are less expensive. There's something may happen. What if there's a pandemic? Whatever. Something happens that means we miss some of these. How can we make sure that we're set up to where even if things don't go well, we can still say we are happy with all the decisions we made. We prioritize things well. If we knew we weren't going to make any of these dates, then it would probably push us to be more likely to do something like this, where we finish two and then finish the other two. So if we start out with that assumption, we may be able to optimize things for unknowns. The other thing that happens is if I deliver, let's say I deliver all these things and I actually meet the date. Well, I don't start getting a return on my investment until all of these things are done. In this case, I should be able to get that out and start earning a return on investment right here while we work on C and D, and start earning a return on investment right here while we work on C and D. I may even find, depending on how my organization is set up, I may even be able to deliver A here, not do this and earn return on investment, and then deliver B here and break them up even more. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can break things down, but usually it's a lot smaller than people actually try.
Okay, so we're on the right track then. Thanks,
Cool.
Mark.
Thanks for your question. Okay, I see somebody else asked something in the chat here. Let me take a look here.
And sorry, I have to drop you
Okay.
for a half hour and I have another meeting. Thank you very
No
much.
problem. See you later.
Bye.
Okay. Am I saying it right? Ambuj? Is that how you say your name? Okay, you're wanting me to send you the meeting stuff. Let me show you where to get those. Let me put this here because somebody else may be in a similar situation. Actually, I see your chat. I'll go ahead and send that to you. I changed something here. I can't get to it right away. I'll go ahead and send that to you to make sure you get it. If you joined with your email address, you will be getting them from there. Okay, anybody else? Let me go and I'm going to stop the streaming here.